Howdy, y'all. Welcome to class. So today we're going to do the deep dive. I've been meaning to make this video for a long time because this is the problem, is that in trading card games right now on YouTube, we have a kind of a market, like, let's see if I can map this out for you. We got a market of content creators, and let's see if I can make like a political compass maybe for like what this looks like. So we have the hardcore capitalists, and so that's the Rudy, and it's all about the money, right? And then on the direct opposite side of things, we'd have someone like Pleasant Kenobi. Love Pleasant Kenobi. I was one of his first 10,000 subscribers. As if that's, yeah, it's worth a brag. Anyway, so Pleasant Kenobi, it's not about the money. Cards should be cheap and inexpensive, etc. So then we have somebody like Gone Rogue Games. And I'm going to call this like half money. Is it half money? So there is money, but then it's also about the community. And that's the thing that Pleasant Kenobi is about, right? It's about the community, the people. And, cards should be accessible. It should be fun. It's about the people. So Gone Rogue Games, he made a video recently where he is critical of what he calls like the heartless streamers, the heartless sellers. And the implication, so the idea here is like, you make a store and you're helping build the community. Like Gone Rogue Games, Kevin, he helps people build decks. He helps people get into games. He recommends games to people. He is building the community as opposed to these online sellers that are more like soulless. And he says that Rudy is not a soulless online seller, but like Rudy doesn't care, right? Rudy's not like, Rudy has never suggested that you shouldn't be a soulless online seller. Gone Rogue Games does care if you're a soulless online seller. However, well, kind of like there's the caveat, because according to Gone Rogue Games, to Kevin, you're okay being a soulless online seller as long as you've kind of put in the work, as long as you give back to the community somewhat. So there's a little bit of the kind of Pleasant Kenobi theory of just like it's community, you shouldn't worry about money. But then there is some focus on money. There's a little bit of focus on money. And then up here at the top left, put everyone's favorites, which is something like... oh my gosh, is he actually my favorite? If I can't remember. All right, kitchen table games. I think there's a games. Maybe it's just kitchen table. Anyway, so kitchen table, it is about the money. There's no kind of community focus. However, I guess it's just less. It's less of, it's not as it's not bullish. Sorry. Okay, so yeah. So the other dimension is that Rudy is like, things are going up, and kitchen table games is like kind of indifferent to the bullishness, whatever, where Gone Rogue Games is often kind of negative. At least he's more negative than kitchen table games when it comes to markets and things like that. And then Pleasant Kenobi is, I wouldn't say negative, but like he just doesn't talk about, I'm going to just do a double no money because he's not, doesn't talk about finance, which is good for him. These are all niches, and these are all great content creators, by the way. I would listen, and probably you too, would listen to all of these people every day if they made a video a day that was 20 minutes, because like, what else are you going to do when you wash your dishes? But so this is like a little bit of the landscape we've got is you can kind of fall people into this bucket. Like I would call, RNG games, I would put him kind of up here with like kitchen table, where there's like in a little bit of market indifferent or more market positive than like Gone Rogue Games, but still like, generally positive. A lot of Pokemon sellers, like I think Nostalgianomics is like up here with Rudy. So anyways, you can kind of, this is a way to parse out these different content creators. Now, what do all of these people have in common? They don't understand very much about economics. And so these are all, and I gotta step back. they all know business except for Pleasant Kenobi. Pleasant Kenobi is out of this conversation. So now we're talking about everybody else. Pleasant Kenobi knows business too. I mean, he runs a very successful business, his own YouTube channel business. But just talking about like the card market and how, what cards go up, down, spinning circles, whatever. These are all smart business people that know a lot about cards and a lot about card markets. None of these people studied economics in college. Rudy studied finance, which is adjacent. But what we're missing here, and what I see, so in Rudy's monologues or in the Kitchen Table podcast or in Kevin's monologues in Gone Wrong Games or the RNG Games monologues, like what all of these things are missing is a little bit of just economic knowledge, because they all hone in on the reality of our world, but they haven't read the like fancy textbook that explains it and explains the theory and the evidence and how this stuff has been measured and studied and whatever. And obviously Rudy has a lot of practical experience with like the 2008 crash and understanding markets as a whole. Like I said, these people all know tons of things. They just haven't read like the textbooks, which is fine. You don't need to, but the textbooks and the little bit of theory can come a really long way when you're trying to understand some of these things that go on in the market. And so that's where, I should have saved that, but that's fine. Anyway, actually, does it like delete? Yeah, it does. All right. So that's where some economics can come in. So let's talk about scalpers, because there is so much misconception and lack of understanding about scalpers in general. Of course, few things, just laying the ground base. They're evil. Absolutely. That's a fact. The way you draw evil people is you give them a mustache, and they're also frowning or something like that. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. See, evil. They're evil. They're scumbags, dirty, awful people. Now that that's out of the way. So let's talk about scalping and how it works, because there's a lot of misconceptions about things. And to talk about this, we're going to take a step back. We're going to talk about a couple words that you're familiar with, but probably haven't thought, or I guess, I don't know. You just haven't read the textbooks, and not that the textbooks are like the end all be all, but I think that this conversation is going to add a lot to your understanding of what's going on with scalpers. So let's talk about monopolies. Let's talk about cartels. Let's talk about like free markets. Yeah, so let's start there. Okay. So let's talk about monopolies. Okay. Let's take a step back. This is going to be your basic supply demand curve. And this is going to be critical for understanding like everything that we're going to talk about. So here on this axis, we're going to have quantity. And then on this axis, we have price. And this is talking about a market. So let's talk about magic cards. Let's talk about Final Fantasy collector booster boxes. Final Fantasy collector booster boxes don't have an incredible quantity, right? So I don't know. We'll just put them like here. So like we're here on the x-axis on the quantity, and they have a crazy high price, right? So what does this mean? Well, this in any market, there's two parts. There is a supply and there is a demand. Supply increases with price. So, or I should say that suppliers are willing to supply more as the price goes up. Let's think about, think about like Twitch streamers. Think about the Twitch meta, right? When hot tub streaming became popular and there were tons of people logging on to watch hot tub streamers, and when the ad revenue comes in to those hot tub streamers, what happens to the amount of hot tub streamers that exist? It goes up, like obviously, right? And this is just true for everything, right? So like there was the mini cupcake fad of the 2010s. The first shop that came out, they could sell at kind of like a high price, they're a unique thing. Well, they're making bank, you see it, and then boom, everyone hops on. The online course sellers of the early 2020s, They making great money. And guess what? Everyone and their dog started selling online courses, right? So these are all examples that just illustrate this reality. So just like there's laws in physics, there's laws in economics, and this is just like how it works. And the law of supply is that as the price goes up, so does the quantity. And that's what creates this supply curve. All right, let's talk about demand. As the price goes up, demand goes down. Although that's not quite the right way to think about it. That's like the easy shortcut way to think about it. But a better way to think about it is something like this. If you want to sell more of something, you need to lower the price. And I think that would make sense to maybe everybody, but certainly anybody who's sold anything. You can think about if you sell anything, if you sell your magic collection on Facebook, if you list it for market price, you're going to get less interest than if you list it for lower and lower. Sorry, this is the lowering the price example again, but trying to get to the, if you want to sell more, right? So, okay, so you have 10 sealed cases of Fallout collector booster boxes. If you want to sell all 10 of those, if you put those on the market and you want to sell them now, you might need to lower the price. There might not be somebody with, the $20,000 or whatever, $10,000 that's just going to buy them off your hands immediately. The more something you want to sell, generally speaking, the lower the price has to go, which is similar to saying that as the price goes down, the demand goes up. This is the law of demand, and this is what creates our demand curve. So it's a downward sloping curve that shows the relationship that as price goes down, the quantity demanded will go up. Awesome. So now we have our supply demand curve, and this creates this helps us note a couple things. If the market works naturally, we're going to have a set quantity, which would be this quantity, whatever that is. We could put a number to it if we want to, and then we're going to have this price, and that is our market. So for something like Final Fantasy, what's interesting is that the demand is off the charts, and you can actually shift these curves. So demand is off the charts. So we're shifting demand to the right, but also supply is cut. And so we will be shifting the supply curve to the left. And what happens? Well, let me remove these lines out of the way. But what happens is that the supply curve, the upward sloping supply curve, shifts to the left, goes up here from, it used to be like down here, right? And then the demand curve, the downward sloping demand curve that used to be right here, is going to shift to the right since demand is off the charts. Boom. And then what happens? We have this quantity that Wizards will be selling at. And then we have this price. And it's not clear to me, like, by the way, as a side note on the Final Fantasy set, it's not clear to me that the quantity is lower. It's probably just that the demand is higher. But anyways, in this case, so you can illustrate. So these graphs are powerful. Like I said, these are like laws in economics. There are nuances for sure. Well, what you can't redo on keyboard shortcuts in Microsoft Paint. So there's definitely nuances to this. We could talk about elasticity. We can talk about non-competitive markets. We can talk about adjustments and things like that. And we are going to talk about some of these right now. But in general, this supply-demand chart is just how it works. So anyways, pretty cool. All right, let's talk about monopolies. Wizards of the Coast is monopoly. Now, people will generally say, or kind of what they have in mind is, if you're a monopoly, you get to choose the price. And yes, so any company can choose the price, right? Like Oreos could go out. I mean, they have agreements with like their partners, with distribution partners like Walmart and Amazon. So there might be a limit to this, but Oreo in theory could go out and say, hey, we want each pack of Oreos, instead of being $4, we want it to be $20, $20 for a pack of Oreos. Companies can technically, on paper, control the price. However, like let's say for this example, let's say that there's a market for Oreos and the natural price is $4. And then Oreo comes in and says, we are going to set the price at $20. Sorry, this is so ugly, but we'll get the point across. So where in a normal market, the quantity would be right here. In this artificially adjusted market where Oreo has set the price, the demand curve would touch about right here. And so, yes, the price goes up, but the quantity goes down. And so this is the new quantity. I'll call it quantity 2. And then the price has gone up. So this is like price 2. Excellent. So yes, companies can control the price, but they can't control the price and the quantity. If you have an amount you have to sell, you don't get to choose the price. The market chooses the price. And so this is critical because this is true for monopolies as well. So yes, monopolies, it's a non-competitive market because there's only one group that is selling something at a monopoly. And so in a monopoly, they get to set the price, which means that it's not a traditional supply curve. A traditional supply curve is filled with suppliers. So let me drill down into that a little bit. I suppose actually Oreos is a weird example because the company Oreo has a monopoly on Oreos. But a better example would be cookies, right? So if you raise your price, people are going to substitute. They're going to get other cookies. That's the reason why the demand goes down. You don't have a monopoly on cookies. Now, Wizards of the Coast does not have a monopoly on games. They don't have a monopoly on fun. They don't have a monopoly on entertainment. There's still some competition, even though they're the only ones that can print Magic the Gathering. So they're not actually a pure monopoly. And I guess from that logic, there's no such thing as a pure monopoly. But Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast is the closest thing to a monopoly you could get. So, but before we dive into that, let's talk about the supply curve, because what this supply curve represents is tons of suppliers, potential suppliers. So you think about Final Fantasy collector booster boxes. There is a store out there that would be willing to sell Final Fantasy collector boxes, like essentially at a loss. Like let's call this like the $300. And just because they want to get their volume up, or they just want to get the money, whatever, for whatever reason, they are a supplier. Remember, this is the supply curve, this upward sloping curve. And there's a supplier out there who's willing to sell at $300. On the other hand, there is a supplier out there. There's somebody who says, I would not be willing to sell Final Fantasy collector booster boxes unless they were selling for like, I don't know, whatever, $3,000. So what happens? Well, the demand comes in, and if the market is efficient, which online markets generally are, efficiency is going to happen when the buyers and the sellers are able to communicate quickly and easily. And that's what happens on eBay or whatever. You know, it's like people are able to say like, this is what I'm going to buy at. You see the listings that aren't selling? People aren't willing to buy those or whatever, right? So it's an efficient market. What happens is we land here at the like $700 or whatever. So in practice, what this means is that this seller right here, this guy who is willing to sell for $300, he is very happy, right? He's like, sweet. Jeez. I was willing to sell at $300. I'm able to sell at $700. That is a win. And you can actually measure that win in this beautiful curve. And it's the distance between here and here. And that is what you would call a supplier surplus. Right. So this person made $400 more than they needed to be willing to make the sale, and they're very happy. There's somebody out here who's willing to sell for $700, and they are indifferent, right? So they could sell it, they cannot sell it, they're just going to hold on to it. And then there's, of course, this person who's only willing to sell if the price reaches $3,000. And guess what? They're not going to sell. And so that's what a supply curve represents normally, is these different tiers of people. Like you can think of like every pixel on the supply curve represents a different seller who's willing to sell at different amounts. As the price goes up, more sellers enter the market. We see this all the time, right? Like how many Kaladesh booster boxes came out of closets when there was the spike because the word Kaladesh got banned for being racist? Quite a few, right? The price goes up, demand goes up and magically supply comes to meet it. It's not because Wizards printed more boxes, right? It's but suppliers will enter the market as prices go up. So very cool. All right. So all of that kind of shenanigery. Let's talk about monopolies, because monopolies are not like this, right? There is not 1,000 sellers. There is one, and they get to choose the price, or effectively like the quantity. Of course, they don't exactly know how many they'll sell. They'd love to know exactly how many they'd sell at a price. Instead, they have to experiment with things like Secret Lair and different sets, right? Because Wizards will choose a price and they'll print a quantity, but they don't get to choose what quantity sells. They just get to choose the price. And so depending on the demand curve, right, if demand is high, then Wizards will sell more. And if demand is low, then Wizards will sell less. And that's the reality for monopolies. Monopolies do not get to just make infinite money. They are still subject to demand. When new Streets of New Capenna came out and demand was like here, they didn't really sell any, right? Well, and to be technically they sold plenty to their distribution partners, and the distribution partners were left holding the bag. But you get the idea. They weren't able to make any more. So, yeah. All right. So what's the point? Scalpers monopoly. Okay. Does the existence of the Wizards of the Coast or the Pokemon or whatever monopoly explain scalpers? No, right? So there are plenty of companies that have monopolies on things. And you think like, does a monopoly mean that something is expensive? And actually there's so many great examples of this in trading card games, because like, let's talk about Altered. Altered, the most successful Kickstarter trading card game ever. Their Kickstarter booster boxes. You know, it's like these things are rare. They're unique. It came with signed posters, uncut sheets. If you were the top tier of the Kickstarter, a monopoly, right? And people scalped, right? People bought these on Kickstarter with the intention to resell. Did the scalpers make money? No. And are people scalping Altered anymore? And the answer is no, right? And it's like, why not? It's because the demand just isn't there. So it's like, yes, there's a monopoly. Yes, Altered sets the price. Now, I say there's monopoly. Altered doesn't have a monopoly on trading card games or fun or whatever. So, is it monopoly? But the point being is that like demand is actually the thing that's going to determine the quantity that's demanded, that the market wants, and it's going to determine the suppliers, right? So more stores, more people would be ordering and getting Altered if it was a beloved game, if the price was spiking, etc. But it's just not happening. And the monopoly does not explain what's going on. What might explain what's going on are cartels. So cartels are really interesting. The idea behind a cartel is that you have a group of people. So it's not just one supplier. So let's pretend that this is how Pokemon works. Let's say that there are like, we'll call them distributors, and there's like 5 of them or something. So there's a bunch of distributors, and they each get Pokemon. What's the newest set? Like Team Rocket or something. So let's say, we'll say there's 4. So they could compete on Team Rocket. So if it's a free market, it means that they're going to undercut each other until they get to the price that they're like the lowest price they're willing to pay relative to the amount of demand that's out there. So in a normal competitive market, this will interact. These suppliers will supply until we meet demand, we get some equilibrium, and that would be the market price. However, you could, in theory, make more money. So I guess let me draw. So this is what would normally happen. If you artificially restrict supply, so if you shoot this supply curve back up here, Price goes up and the quantity available goes down. And this price going up represents, so we get this kind of square of wealth that's generated. Less are being sold, so it doesn't necessarily mean more money is being made immediately, but there's a higher price. And so those that are being sold, there's going to be better margins and that kind of thing. So there's a real like oil cartel, right? And it's falling apart a little bit now, but the idea is that if everybody can work together to sell, to restrict supply, then everybody can make more money. The alternative to this is you compete. So if this is the price that the cartel sets, if this one sneaky distributor comes in and says, hey, we're selling all of ours for this price right here, so like undercutting the cartel, they're going to get more sales and they'll get more profits. And if that happens, then this guy's like, hey, wait, I want to sell right here and undercut you. And then you're back to a free market, right? And so cartels are tricky. You have to work together. You have to trust each other. And if you do that, you can artificially restrict supply such that prices go up and you can make extra money. So the question is, when it comes to scalpers, is that what's going on? Is there an organized group of individuals that are raiding targets on Friday mornings, and they are agreeing to hold back a certain amount of the target stuff that they're getting so that prices can artificially rise? No. Like, obviously not. Scalpers are going to these stores and they're buying the stuff at this price. So by the way, like let's map this out. Let me back up a little bit. Oh geez, gotta back up quite a bit. So yeah, let's back up. So demand is off the charts. So let's say that supply is normal. Supply might be down, but let's say supply is normal. And oh man, there's so many cool things to talk about when you get the models to kind of like understand what's going on here. So supply, let's say supply is normal, so to speak. Which, this is a monopoly. This is a monopoly thing. So the supply curve isn't exactly a upper sloping line because it's not like there can be more sellers that enter the market. Now, Pokemon will make more as more sell, but let's say that there is a fixed quantity. Which, by the way, I messed up earlier. I drew this kind of like sideways price, like setting a price, but really what monopolies do is they set the quantity. And so that's the supply curve. It is the quantity that Pokemon has made. And then Pokemon, however many years ago, the demand was right here and the price was whatever, like $100 for a box, and it'd sell here and whatever. Well, demand has gone up, right? So demand has gone up. Supply has not gone up. The quantity has not changed. But now the price for these booster boxes are like 200, 300, whatever. That's what's happened. So, but let's talk about MSRP. So this is the market. This is the market price that has happened because of increased demand. And maybe you could argue it happened because of lowered supply, but either way. So let's talk about what is happening inside of Target. So that is the price that consumers are willing to pay, is like 200, which means that the demand curve, let me see if I can draw this more to the side. So the demand curve is way up there. So it's to the right. It's downward sloping to the right, whatever. And the supply for Target is fixed and it's like low. And it's low. It's fixed quantity. We'll keep that. All right. So this is the market price, just like before. I guess I could draw this on the other one, but the price, the MSRP, the price is fixed here. So what do you notice? Well, guess what? When the price is the market price, the demand is here. So the quantity demanded, we'll call this whatever, 1 million. The quantity demanded is there at the market price, but we're not at the market price, right? We're at the MSRP. The MSRP is here. That's where the demand curve intersects the MSRP. What is the quantity demanded now? It's like, 3 million or whatever. So that is what's happening. And guess what? There aren't that many. There aren't 3 million. There's only 1 million, which means that the people here, so people are buying at this price and getting this quantity, but they're getting the surplus. Like this box right here, we're going to call this scalper value. Alp. Oh, I can't write. Why did I do this? So that is the scalper value right there. That box. Yeah, I'm just going to like scribble. Yeah. This box right here is the excess value that scalpers, not that scalpers get, that anyone gets. So if you're a kid, if you're little, Timmy, and you walk in and luckily all the scalpers slept in or whatever, and you're able to get your box of Prismatic or Team Rocket or whatever, or your, whatever it's called, Final Fantasy set. If you're getting it at this discount relative to market price, you get this excess value. Now you can say like, oh, but the kid's just going to go home and open it. He doesn't care what the price is. It's like, okay, that's nice. But that's not the average person. The average human cares about the value of things. I mean, just think about this. If you went to Walmart and you bought an apple and then you walked out of the store and someone's like, dang it, you got the last apple. I'll give you $500 for that apple. What would you do? It's like, oh, I was planning on eating this, so no, thank you. It's like, no, you'd sell them the apple. It's just like obvious, right? It's not controversial. It's not complicated. If there's someone out there who wants it, who values something at this price, but you're able to buy it at this price, then you ought to sell it, obviously. So now I'm not defending, like we talked about earlier, scalpers are evil, they're dirty dirtbags, et cetera, et cetera. So not trying to defend them, but that's the idea though. Okay, so that's what's going on at Target. Now, I think we addressed this, but just to make sure, scalpers are not cartels. They're not artificially holding back supply such that now you could say like distributors are or whatever. And, interesting. But that would also mean that like demand is just normal. And I think there's a lot of evidence that demand is higher than before. And you can see this for products that distributors aren't holding back, right? Like things that have been in the market for a long time and their prices going up. And so, yeah, I don't think there's a lot of evidence for the kind of cartel model for how things are going. So those are the manipulated markets. Cartels, monopolies. Now, there's other versions of manipulated markets, but those are some of the main ones. So let's just consider the possibility that this is a free market. There is a quantity supplied by the Pokemon Company or by Magic with Final Fantasy or whatever, and then there is a demand curve, and it seems like demand is high. And so there is a price that people are willing to buy this at. And then, and that's the market price. And then we have the MSRP. And at the MSRP, there's going to be a heightened quantity of people who want it. So this amount right here are all the losers that don't get it. And this quantity right here are the scalpers. Okay, so yeah, the evil scalpers. So, okay, let's talk through this. Why do the scalpers get the product? Why do the heartless online whatnot streamers have so much and the nice little boy down the street doesn't have any? Because the nice little boy down the street wants it this much. They want it for $40. They want their Prismatic Evolutions ETB or whatever, or their booster box of Dragon Storm or whatever. They want it that much. You know who wants it this much? It's the scalpers. The scalpers are valuing this like it's a $200 product or whatever. I'm going to keep using Pokemon because that's been like the serious like scalp thing. But this is true about Final Fantasy too, you know. People so the prismatic evolution ETBs, they keep getting sniped by evil dirty scalpers who value them at their market price. So they're willing to put in $220 worth of effort to get something, while the, you know, nice boy down the street values it at $40. And you can say like, well, this is messed up. It's supposed to be $40. And so that little boy should really like get it. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. Let's say the little boy does get it. But let's say that little boy really is worth $40. And let's say that little boy cares about money. I cared about money. I've always cared about money. Man, if I got a prismatic evolution ETB and I was 8 years old and I brought it home and any adult said to me, I have $200 in my hand, I will give you these. Oh my gosh, am I exaggerating? I think they're not going for 200. They're going for like 120 or something like that. Anyway, I have $100 in my hand. I will give it to you right now for that prismatic evolution ETB that you just bought for $40. Guess what I would do? Guess what I would do? Guess what any kid would do? Guess what anyone would do? Because if you only value it at $40 and someone's offering you $100 for it, then you just made $60, right? So who gets it? Who's going to get all of the prismatic evolution ETBs? It's people who are either willing to put in $120 worth of effort, like the evil scalpers, or $120 worth of money. And they're the people that get it. And there's an argument in economics that they're the people that should get it. Who should get the expensive things? And the idea is like the people who are willing to put up the money. And you might say something like, well, that's not fair. That's like an evil capitalist society where the rich get everything they want and the poor don't get anything. And there's a huge issue with inequality, and that's a whole nother conversation. I don't think Pokemon cards is a great place to have the conversation about inequality, because God help us, like if our argument to help out poor people is like they need their allocation, it's like, oh, what are we doing, right? But this is the thing, is that even with poor people, like what's so interesting in macroeconomics, when you look at an entire country and spending patterns, when there's a recession, when people lose their jobs, when bad things happen and people don't have money, guess what stays the same, stays consistent somehow? Consumption, actually. Consumption stays consistent. You know what goes down is savings. But people still go to the movies. People still buy TVs. Like en masse, right? And you can say like, well, when my dad got fired, you know, they went on a spending freeze and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's great. That's really good for your dad. That's not the average person. Regardless of if you have money or don't have money, people buy the stuff they want for the most part. And you know, I can already like feel people getting upset, so I don't have to keep talking about this. But consumption stays pretty flat. And this is the thing, is that if you value, right, if you collect Pokemon or Magic or whatever, and you really want the thing and you can't afford it, you can probably sell or trade part of your collection to get it, right? But you're not doing that. And why not? It's because you don't value the thing at, you know, $120 or whatever. You'd rather keep your old cards or old collection. I have or had a Maelstrom Wanderer Commander deck that was like pretty OP. Had like, it actually wasn't. It's frustrating because the deck has a random component to it, but I wanted it to be strong, and the random component would sometimes make it very weak because you cascade into Arbor Elf and Bird's Paradise. And so anyways, could be a frustrating deck. So I decided to sell it because why? Because I wanted a Final Fantasy Collector Booster Box. I was like, how can I get $600? You know, and it's like, I'm going to sell my, and this is the thing. I want it more than you, right? Like, if you weren't willing to sell your most expensive commander deck to buy a $700 booster box, I want it more than you. And who should get the things? The people who want them, the people who actually want them. How awful would it be if the people who got the things were the people who didn't really want them? And guess who really wants the things? It's the people who are willing to pay the price. Let's give another example. So another, economics is like so uncontroversial. So I'm really glad that I get to just give all these examples that are just really easy to agree with and won't raise anyone's blood pressure. So there's a hurricane coming in your town. You go to your Walmart. You are miraculously the first person there. And in fact, no one else is let in. You're the only person like at that Walmart, and they're stocked on everything, including water. You know there's going to be a storm. You know that like water is going to go out, and you need drinkable water. So you go to the cases of water, and like, how much does a case of water normally cost? Like $6, $8, something like that. There's not infinite, right? But there's like 200 cases of water or whatever. And of course there's a line outside, but you're there first. How many cases are you going to get? Now, if you're like a really considerate, nice person, you might be like, oh, I only want to get like 1 or 2 or whatever. But let's say that there's no, like, you're not going to get angry eyes from people. Like, let's say that you're able to like grab your cases of water, pay, and then you just teleport home. It's $6 a case. You've got a family. You've got, like who knows how long water is going to be out. You're probably going to buy like 3 or 4 cases, right? I mean, it's just like the smart thing to do. Okay. Same, right? Same here, right? So it's like, I freaking, who knows the lengths I'd go if I thought it was going to make my family more comfortable, right? Like my kids, my wife, whatever. And yeah, I get it. It's like, that just makes sense. Okay. But let's replay the scenario. You walk into Walmart, you're the only one there. There's still the like 200 cases of water, whatever. You haven't bought any yet. So this is just fresh slate. We're starting over with this example. So you walk up to the water. Each case of water costs $200. What do you do? Well, first off, you get really upset because they are price gouging, which is illegal, by the way. Stores wouldn't be allowed to do this, but you're super upset. You're going to call your lawyer and sue them, whatever. But then you get back to the issue at hand. How many cases are you going to buy? The answer is exactly how many you need. If you know that you have to get 4 cases of water, you'll pony up and pay it. But if you're like, oh, you know what? I've got some life straws. Oh, geez, I'm dying of pneumonia. Anyways, if you start thinking, you're like, I've got some life straws. Like I could just like scoop up like freaking, rainwater and we could drink out of the straws and we're going to be fine. Like we're not going to die. I'm not going to buy any. I'm not going to buy a single case because I want to save my money. My money's worth my money's worth money to me, obviously. And I don't need it. I don't need the water. I don't need it because I got my life straws or whatever. So, okay. So now the question is, which scenario is more efficient? In which scenario does the people who need the water get the water? And it's of course the second one. And the question is like, why is that? It's like, well, because markets are incredible things. I guess I think I'm done with my little paint, whatever. Maybe not. Maybe we'll go back. But markets are incredible things. It is insanely efficient to let markets determine prices for people to negotiate and exchange money for goods in a competitive way. What happens is that producers or suppliers will lower their prices in order to sell more. So demanders will be able to get higher quality products for less price. And this is, there's a lot of assumptions that go into this. You can think of like, I can list 1,000 ways capitalism's evil, whatever. That's true. And we can go into that and we can map that out and graph it because it's, this economic theory doesn't just fall apart the second that you point out that power and capital accumulates into the hands of less and less people. There's a lot of inefficiencies in our market these days. Things are not competitive. If you think about things like healthcare or freaking card prices or the price of food or whatever, there's a lot of things that make it non-competitive. But if things are competitive, if companies have to compete and if consumers have to compete for goods with their money, it's powerful. It makes a powerful set of incentives that makes people very productive and very efficient. Things go to the people who want them the most. And when people really want things, more of them get made. Clever alternatives get made. So there's a lot of power here. Okay. Scalpers. What have we discovered? We discovered besides the fact that they're absolutely evil dirtbags, the worst people in the world? Um, it's just the most natural thing in the world. Like we were talking about the Apple thing. You know, you go into a store, you buy an apple, then on your way out, somebody's like, "Hey, I'll give you $100 for that." In the future, you're just going to be like, "Oh, like, is this real?" And you find out it's real. Apples are super expensive, but you know, the next time you're at a store, if there's an apple, and you're like, I'm gonna buy it, you know, because sweet, it's only like $2. I'm gonna buy it. It's just free money, and that's what's going on here. You know, people are whining where it's like, oh, there's all these people interested in Pokemon, but they're not here for the game. They're here for the money. It's like, right, because it's free money. My dog, Maisie, it's okay. The Navy SEALs aren't going to get you. We live by a military base. Anyways, so, oh, geez, this is going to ruin my video. That's fine. Maisie, please. So, markets are so efficient, so effective. These scalpers are just people who want money, because that's what it is. It's just money. So actually, yeah, we do want to go back to this, because the next question might be something like, how do we fix this, right? And maybe you already see where this is going, like the right way to fix this. So we have this demand curve, and we have an MSRP, which, you know, is just this fictitious, it's just made up, right? Because the MSRP does not set the price. In a free market where there isn't a gun to your head and people are willing to exchange their resources freely, people are going to pay what it's worth to them. And if a pack of cardboard is worth to them, you know, 100, 200, 700, whatever bucks, they're going to pay that, because that's just what they want to do. So we've established, you know, this is a free market. People are spending the money the way they want to spend it. So you can set an MSRP, but it doesn't matter. So you have, this is what's going on. We have this quantity. So there's this elevated price. How do you fix this? If you raise the quantity, crazy stuff. What happens? So if they quadrupled the number of Prismatic Evolution ETBs or Final Fantasy booster boxes or whatever, guess what? Price would go down to market, or MSRP or whatever. That's the solution. I mean, once you get there, right, the scalpers are no longer, there's no money to be made, right? You're no longer just grabbing the apples because you know it's free money. You only buy apples when you want apples. If you want people to be able to buy the product and enjoy it, like if you want the only people to buy the product to buy it because they really want it, then there cannot be any lack of supply. If there's any lower quantity than there's demand for, then the price is just going to shoot up. So there's only one way to fix this. It's not the scalper's fault. Like, do you understand how stupid it is to like blame people for wanting to make money, for wanting to take care of their family, for wanting to like move up in the world or move on with life? And yeah, we can scoff at, like, you know, you're fighting people inside of a Target. Like, how'd you get here? You know, it's like, let's sit down with a therapist and talk about how to maybe like better get your life together. Like, I'm all about making fun of people for the things they'll do for money. That's fine. But can you blame people for wanting to make money? Is like that, you know, like, money represents so much. It represents time. It represents protection, security, the ability to date, to like find happiness, really. Like, money has a lot to do with happiness. Of course, people, if there's like money to be made, people will be there, right? So there's only one solution to this. Quantity needs to go up. Now, we already established scalpers are absolutely evil scumbags, but if they print more, then we'll get more. What's kind of funny, well, okay, sorry. One funny thing and then one less funny thing. Pokemon has not signaled that they want prices to go up. They've signaled the opposite. They've tried to reassure customers that they're trying to keep prices down. But what's interesting is that Pokemon owns their own printers. And if you do some math, like Nostalgianomics did some math about how many booster packs are being opened like every night by streamers, and it's enough to expend all of the booster packs in the world. And so like Pokemon, I think they literally just need more printers. Like it's not that their printers are turned off. I think they're literally doing everything they can to print more, but they just can't. Demand is outstretching. So that's going to take some time to solve, but they will solve it. There's money to be made if they have more packs, and they're going to get more packs. It's just going to take some time. Magic, on the other hand, is a little different. They do want to raise their prices. They've signaled that very clearly. They've been trying to figure out how to raise their prices for the better part of the last 10 years. And they're getting better and better and better at it. They're figuring out ways to raise their prices where the market will accept it. They've had some hiccups, like Commander Masters was not a good time for them. They raised prices then with that Master set, and it didn't go super well. But it's looking like it's going well with this Final Fantasy. I don't think it's going to go well with Spider-Man later this year, actually. That's my hot take. But anyways, it's coming back. So where are we at? Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering. They are not interested. They want prices to go up. And so they will artificially keep supply back to keep prices up. That's what they want to do. So they're going to do their best to keep doing that, but it's a really tricky game. You see them mess this up, right, where they'll print too much, and the price will go like below MSRP, right? So if you print all the way over here, then suddenly you get like what Merzikrola Manor, or I guess Aether Drift a little bit, although I think Aether Drift isn't selling below distributor prices. It's fine. But anyways, you get that point. So yes, there is monopoly power here. Like, while there are other games and other ways to have entertainment, Pokemon and Magic are kind of irreplaceable in a lot of people's lives, right? There's a lot of people who have sworn their life and soul to Wizards of the Coast or the Pokemon Company, and they can just keep raising prices, and they'll just make more money. And so we'll see some of that for sure. And so scalpers might not go away, right? Like in Magic or things like that. Although what's interesting is, just as a side note with scalpers, so something like Secret Lair is a very popular product for scalpers to get. This is an example I'll give, then we'll wrap things up. So Secret Lair, Wizards of the Coast, they choose quantity. Well, yeah, they do. They choose a quantity. And yes, they also choose the price, but you're seeing how that is like not going well for them, right? Where if they choose a price like up here, like they did for the most recent Secret Lair, where zero of the things sold out. I mean, they raised their price for their commander deck, for the Everyone's Invited commander deck. Did not sell out, still hasn't sold out. I'm pretty sure it's still available. The cards just aren't that good. And scalpers have realized that there's not a lot of margin to be made because Wizards keeps raising the price. Once upon a time, Secret Lairs, something like the Monty Python Secret Lair, right? The Monty Python Secret Lair was priced like down here. It's still expensive, but compared to the demand, it was underpriced. And so this quantity sold out instantly. Demand was, over here at that price. And so scalpers were able to buy it and then sell it at the market price, which would have been up here. And so this box right here was the scalper paradise for the Monty Python Secret Lair. But as Wizards raises the price, like imagine if they had sold the Monty Python Secret Lair for, instead of like $40 for one of the packs, it was $80. They might not have sold out, right? It might still be available today. And so what's interesting is Wizards is really trying to figure out, they're like, how can we get like exactly here? They want it to sell out instantly or quickly or whatever, but they don't want the money to be made by scalpers. They want to make the money, which like good on them, I guess. So it's interesting. So Wizards is trying to kill the scalpers, and they're going to do it by raising their prices. And Pokemon's going to try to kill the scalpers, and I'm going to do that by increasing quantity. And either way, the ability to scalp will kind of go away. In theory, right? There's always like exceptions or mistakes to this, but that's it. That is what you need to know. That is the economics behind scalpers. There's all this dialogue and rhetoric, but the key things to hit on that people don't like think about, don't understand, is that first off, scalpers is just like it's like so funny to think of them as like, oh, these evil people with agenda. It's people who want money. It's like everybody wants money. Oh, I would never do that. It's like, yeah, but you've got better ways to make money in your life. And these people don't. In these people's minds, this is the best way to make money. And they can make money. They are making money, right? There's not enough quantity to go around. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that it's not, the solution can't come from as long as there's money to be made, people will do it. You can't shame people out of, doing stuff that will make them money. The solution is you got to take the money out of it, which you can do by either raising the prices or by increasing the amount that are printed. And so that's the real solution. That's how we can take care of scalpers. Good times. Thanks for tuning in. If you did watch this all the way, you really should leave a comment because, this is obviously a small channel and it's always going to be small. And so you can really choose what I talk about, if you want to hear more stuff like this or about other things. I mean, if you watched all the way, you do want to hear more stuff like this, but yeah, just let me know so that I can make more. Good times.